The third issue I was going to talk about, and this will be the last one I'll talk about tonight, is the lack of confidence that people have in government. And I think really this one is probably the key. You know, the budget is bad. You know, land use regulations is a big issue. There's many ways that we can look at, you know, fixing these problems. But I think all of these come because people have just lost their lack of faith in government. I talked to several people that say, you know, I'd call my commissioner, I'd go to the meetings, but they wouldn't listen to me anyways. So why even bother? They're just going to, you know, go with what the developers want, or they're going to go with what the businessmen want, or they're going to represent this group of people, and, you know, they kind of give up. And I think it's very unfortunate that we've created an environment where people don't get involved with their political system like they should. And I think that's actually one reason that I wanted to run, is because I want Blount Countyans to know that they actually will have someone in office that will listen to you, that will represent you, and that will respect your opinion. One example I was going to kind of go over a little bit is several months ago there was a vote on the budget. And before the budgets are voted on, if any of the commissioners have a conflict of interest, so essentially if they either work for a county department, if they're married to someone that works for a county department, or if they actually work for a company that deals with the county, they're required to read a conflict of interest statement before they can vote, which essentially says, you know, they're going to vote, their vote will be neutral, and they're voting for how they put their conscience. Out of 21 commissioners, 10 had to read the conflict of interest statement. So to me, that kind of says that we've got too many people in the county government that are a little too connected to how they're voting. And it's hard for me to think that it's hard for me to trust that they're doing what's best when they have these connections. I can't lay blame on anybody personally, but it puts that doubt in the citizens' minds when you've got all these conflicts going on. So you don't really know if they're representing you or representing someone else. And I think that's a very, very unfortunate situation that we have in the county. And I'll just finish up real quick. And I never really had a strong urge to run for public office until, like I was saying a couple of years ago, I began attending the county commission meetings. Many of us have spoken at several of them against some unfair regulation of private property and property and tax increases. Of course, last week we had the almost property tax increase, which we spoke at too. And despite several of them, I know last week they voted down the property tax increase, but despite some of our other efforts, they voted the way they wanted to anyways. Kind of seemed like they ignored us. And it sounded like they were listening to those with influence and ignoring the citizens. And again, that's why I decided it was time to get involved and to do something about it. And I believe it's time for Blount County to have someone in office that will listen to you, that will represent you, and will not play favorites, essentially. I'm going to be an independent candidate, and I'm going to protect your God-given rights to your property and your life. And I hope that you feel the same way, and will consider voting for me on August 5th, and early voting starts July 16th through July 31st. And I got some ink pens and some business cards over here, and I've got some yard signs out in the car if anybody's interested. So with that, I'll open up the floor to any questions anybody has. Yeah, you have a question?
Are you for or against the Pellissippi Parkway extension, and why?
Personally, I am against the Pellissippi Parkway extension. I believe it kind of gets down to property rights. It doesn't seem fair that we would sacrifice people's homes and farms just to save tourists 5 minutes in a drive. And again, I think it just, not only that, but it's the cost. It gets down to just the maintenance, not just the building it, it's the maintenance of keeping it up, and you know, all the strain to the existing roads and the existing property. And I don't think that's a very good idea, in my opinion, and I would not be for that. Yes?
I'd like to know, does the commissioners have control over the spending of the other things, like for instance the sheriff? Or do you get to vote on the budget?
Yes.
I mean, so when he goes to buy 200 cars and doesn't have 200 employees to drive them, you can look at that and say, no.
Yes, the commission, the departments would submit their budgets to the commission, actually the budget committee, And then they'll pass that on to the county commission, which would then vote up or down on whether or not that department would get that.
Okay, then the fact that the budget is what it's like is a result of the commissioners we've had?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, it is. Yes.
All right, last Thursday, the Daily Times had an article
Okay.
about some action our sheriff department took, and it happened on last Wednesday. I don't know who all's heard about it, but evidently Harriman City, which is what county, Rome? So a neighboring county called up Sheriff Barong and asked them for help with this SWAT team, which stands for something. Special Weapons and Tactics.
Okay.
And they went over, Sheriff Barong and some of his SWAT guys went over there and helped with someone who was hitting someone with a hammer, a sledgehammer,
Nice.
and stuff like that. And, you know, I don't know if Harriman City paid them for their services, but my thought was, we need to cut Sheriff Barong's budget down to zero until he finds those 35 cars he can't find, till he sells his extra 117. And why is he buying? See, here's what they said. The people who work in the police department over in Rome, they said, "Oh, we really were impressed with all of his equipment."
Yeah.
Yeah, his equipment that we went in debt to buy, and are going to pay interest for, you know, generations. So he's off having fun with all his little cop equipment, and it really makes me see we need to rein him in good. So how would you as a commissioner handle Sheriff Barong? 20 years as our sheriff, no running guy against him, because they threatened the running guy against him, the one they had. How would you rein him in with all this equipment he loves to buy?
Well, I don't know anything about that situation, so I don't know if I can comment directly on it. But I think the way I would handle it is essentially the way you'd handle the rest of the departments. Just spending freeze. You know, let's figure out what's going on first. And if there are, you know, discrepancies like, you know, cars missing or too much money here, too much money there, those are things that the commission really needs to look at, that they're not looking at. You know, they too often just vote yes on everything, and they might not read what they're voting on, or maybe they don't care. But you know, you know, I don't want to single out a department over another, but I definitely think that every single department their budget should be reevaluated, and let's start cutting some of this waste out of there.
Can the
And if his department has the most waste, then that's the most, you know, he'll be getting the most cuts. I mean, that's just how it's going to go. Even if it's not brought up before the commission, at least the commissioner can on his own, you know, talk to some of these departments, which I plan on doing. You know, if elected, let's figure this out, because the way we're doing things is not working. So, yes.
Someone speaking at Thursday night's meeting made mention of a zero layoff policy.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know anything about that? And does the commission have any say about that? I mean, if departments need to lay people off, they need to lay people off.
Mm-hmm. I agree. You know, it's, and again, I think I said this before at the last forum. You know, it's kind of a sad situation when you have to look at somebody and tell them, you know, I'm sorry, you got to go. But my company laid off 20 people to save costs, and I don't know why government should be different. I mean, it's a job, and people will find other jobs.
Is that true though? Is there a zero layoff policy?
What I've heard is that the county has not laid off any employees. I don't know the time frame of that. I don't know if it's been the past 20, 30, 10 years. But yeah, they kind of boast that they haven't laid any employees off in a while. And I think it gets back down to the department budgets. I mean, when you budget more money to hire someone, well, let's stop that. Let's figure out. Let's see if you got people, sufficient people to run your department, and then we'll go from there.